Well, it's finally over. Mini camp, and now the dead period, as they like to call it in the National Football League. Sal Capaccio, Matt Bove. It's always game day in Buffalo. I just feel like everybody always asks, like, when does the offseason start? When does the new season start? Yes, there's a league calendar. I do feel like, Matt, that at the end of minicamp, it's kind of like putting a lot in the rearview mirror, and then it's kinda like that's the old, and the new is still ahead of us. So I do feel like it's kind of the ending of something, even though it technically is. It wasn't the beginning of the new season. It's almost like it is the end of the offseason.
It felt like the last day of school. Everything about
There you go.
yesterday felt like
Yeah.
the last day of school, even with the practice ending and the players running off the field through the field house back to the locker room. Some of them probably have flights to catch, or they have cars that they're going to get into and they're going to drive home. They know this is their time away. Some of them said that they're going to stick around for a little bit. Some of them are going on vacation. Everybody kind of has a different plan. It's just like everybody's summer. It's everybody's summer. What are you going to do? Who knows?
Dawson Knox is getting married, I believe. I mean, you never know what's going to happen with these guys.
Yeah, I think Dawson Knox is getting married. Taron Johnson told me he's actually sticking around Buffalo for most of the summer because he wants to get some work in with the other DBs. I know Josh Allen has some plans to get some work in with some other guys on the team too. So, yeah, I think that it just kind of depends on the person.
And then there's some camps going on. A lot of the guys I know, Dalton Kincaid and Spencer Brown have a camp here in Western New York. Some other guys might as well. Some guys have camps going on in their hometowns or where they played college football or something like that. So they're trying to make sure that they obviously stay engaged in some way, but you have to balance that with getting away. Sean McDermott, I asked him, what's your message to the players leaving here? He said, obviously, stay in shape, come back ready, but make sure you get away a little bit, make good decisions. That was a big thing as well. So it's always that balance, right? I asked Dwayne Carter, how do you balance it? He said, I don't know. It's kind of new for me, right? He said, you want to kind of you want to get away from it a little bit, but you can't get too far away from it. You got to be ready for training camp. In a rookie's case, you want to come in ready to give your best impression, obviously, right away.
Well, the nightmare scenario is what happened last year with Nyheim Hines.
That's
Nyheim
right.
Hines, during this break, is on vacation, minding his business, and then something on a jet ski happens, and then he never plays for the Bills last year. And he got injured before they even got to training camp and had a season-ending surgery. So it's just, hey, be smart. That's a freak accident. Freak accidents happen. You can't tell these guys to go sit on their couch for 5 weeks, and we'll see in Rochester. But it's also, let's mitigate any risk possible. Guys, no skydiving. Guys, no crazy fast racing or whatever. Anything sounds really cool, just don't do that.
You said sit on the couch. This is totally unplanned. A guy I wrote down here was Corey Couch, who had a couple of nice plays on defense, an undrafted free agent. So let's start with some of the guys that kind of we noticed a little bit here through this mini camp, and maybe even going back through all of the OTAs. And I'll start with Corey Couch. This is an undrafted free agent out of Miami. Remember, Jamil Adai comes from Miami, the DB coach. So, he's very familiar with him. I don't think that necessarily he's got a big shot to make the team, but this is what you have to start noticing, right? And when you go out to training camp, unfortunately, there'll be injuries here or there. Guys step up, guys make plays. But I thought Corey Couch really was a guy that made some plays. He had an interception on Wednesday. He got in the backfield to bat down a screen on Thursday. I think Kaiir Elam had a really strong offseason as well. But anywhere you want to go from there, if you want to touch on Kaiir or however you want to do this, you go right ahead.
Yeah, Kaiir would have been the first person that I would have said, just because he has been noticeably impressive. And I think for him, the biggest benefit of the last month was the absence of Russell Douglas during OTAs. And then once we got to mandatory minicamp, the absence of Christian Benford. So he got a lot of reps alongside either Benford or Douglas, depending on the situation, and really made the most of it. Interceptions on the first day of minicamp, another interception on the second day of minicamp, and those were good plays. It was not just like a, hey, overthrow. It was him breaking in front of a route for Keon Coleman, beating him with physicality, making the play. It's just positive steps in the right direction for somebody who a lot of people, myself included, thought might be a bust, might have already written off. He is going into year 3. They have a big decision that they need to make with him, but so far, so good. And I think what we've seen for the last month from Kaiir Elam maybe makes the coaching staff and the front office a bit more confident of, okay, this can be our number 3 guy. And if somebody gets hurt, we feel comfortable enough playing him, as opposed to using whatever money they have left to go out and get another cornerback like we've talked about on a different episode of this podcast.
Honestly, who are the corners on this team right now? If you had to do a projected 53, you're not only keeping 4 guys, you're going to have Russell Douglas and Christian Benford on the outside, Taron Johnson on the inside. Those are your starters. Beyond that, I have to go Kyrie Elam and Jamarcus Ingram. And, I like Jamarcus, but I'm also just saying it because of the numbers, right? It's not just because I do like them. It's also because what other options you have? Kyron Brown, Daquan Hardy is a guy that I think does have a chance to make the team because of his return ability. They drafted him to Corey Couch, like I said, and then Kenny H. Lovely as well. I think that Kenny A, I think is how you say his name, but those are the guys on the team right now. They don't have all these guys you look at and go, oh yeah, that he's going to be on the team. There's going to be some interesting battles here.
Yeah, Daquan Hardy feels like to me if he makes it, he's a returner. I just don't think he has the size to play boundary corner. He would be Taron's backup. But even if he's Taron's backup, I know he's listed. I know Cam Lewis is listed as safety, but if something happened to Taron Johnson, I think they would put Cam Lewis there. So then I don't even know if there's a role for him to be a backup defensively. And does that mean you just make the team to be a returner? I guess we will have to see. I understand the role of returner will be more elevated now because of all the new special teams roles, but is there anybody else on the roster who can do it? Maybe Ty Johnson could do it. Maybe one of the other running backs could do it. I don't exactly know. Right now, this is a sidebar. Who is the favorite right now to return stuff?
It's a good question. I don't know. Are we talking punt or kick? Punt, right? Mostly because kick, you can kind of put different guys back there.
Yeah.
I think kickoff, that's something they're going to have to work through with the new rules too, right? So you never know where that goes. I think I would say that punt returning would be maybe Hardy. Would it be Khalil Shakir might be, right? A guy, depending on how much you want to use him. He's a guy that can return. I don't know. It's a good question. Just real back though. Go back to your corner list though. I mean, what do you think? How does it shake out? And again, I know that we make jokes about, my love affair with Jamarcus Ingram and how he's played, but honestly, he might be the next guy on the list, right?
Yeah. I think if there's a clear-cut 4, for the sake of the conversation, take Taron Johnson out of it. Taron Johnson is a corner, but in my head, I think of him more almost even like a linebacker than I think of him like a corner. So you have Russell Douglas 1, Christian Benford 2, Kyrie Elam 3, Jamarcus Ingram 4. After that, I really do not know. I just don't know enough about the guys that are behind those 4. And that's still, to me, why maybe there is a veteran corner that's added to this group, just to give you a little bit more of another option, a break class in case of emergency. It's been a position where they have done that in the past. I know they've had their hand forced because of injuries to Tre'Davious White, to Christian Benford, even to Dane Jackson, so they've needed to get creative there. I just think that is a position to monitor. That being said, a really good step in the right direction because Kyrie Elam looked real good during mandatory minicamp, and so did Russell Douglas, even after not being here for OTAs at all. He just kept making plays too. Every time that guy is on the field, he makes a play. I mean, I don't know if it was a conversation I was having with you on the sideline or somebody else, but it was almost the first 11-on-11 drills of maybe Tuesday. Russell Douglas jumps in front of a route, gets his hand on a ball. And it's just like, this guy hasn't even been here for a month, and he's already just doing that.
Yeah, it's his game, right? And it's why that they traded for him. And now going into the last year of his contract, there was a bit made about him being not at OTAs. He basically said, look, I need to get away for a little while. There's nothing there. I just, I do football all year round. And, who can blame him sometimes for that? And we totally get it. He's back from mandatory minicamp. And obviously now the team takes a break. How about we'll stay on the defensive side of the ball. Anybody else you want to touch on that was a standout to you on defense? Somebody that, or even for any negative reasons, but a positive and negative, somebody who just kind of has been in your brain.
So I really have liked Kingsley Jonathan. Have you been paying attention to Kingsley Jonathan? I mean, I know you're a Syracuse guy, so you kind of have.
I have paid attention to him for that reason. I watched Kingsley for that reason, but I've paid attention to him the last 2 years in his game, but I did notice him a lot in OTAs, not as much in minicamp. And I do agree with you that in OTAs, I think he was a guy who made plays.
I'm thinking more grand scope of what the last month has been, more as just opposed to mandatory minicamp.
No, I like it.
I think Kyrie Elam's best week was during mandatory minicamp, but he also looked good in OTAs. I think Kingsley Jonathan really impressed in OTAs. And then this week kind of, just didn't impress, just didn't notice him as much. But over the scope of the entire portion of the offseason, I've liked Kingsley Jonathan. I just have been paying a lot of attention to the defensive line, because I don't know what to expect from the defensive line. So you just go over there and you're watching different guys, and it's like, okay, what will this person do? What will this person do? I think Kingsley Jonathan has a very real chance of getting a jersey on game days this year, not even just making the team, because after Von Miller, which I don't know what to expect, Greg Rousseau and AJ Epinesa, is he better than Casey Toohill at this point in Casey Toohill's career? I don't know. Is he better than Smoot? Once again, a veteran option, but I think Kingsley Jonathan makes the team.
On the offensive side, a few standouts as well we've noticed over the last few weeks. All right, Matt, I think everybody focuses their eyes at wide receiver, right? And we talked a lot about Chase Claypool the last couple of weeks, and he didn't do anything to diminish that for me. Not that he was making wild plays, but he's just involved, right? And I noticed that. And I just think that when they signed him, I would have had him probably 8th, 9th, 10th, maybe down the list. Okay, maybe he's a chance. I think he has a legit shot to make this roster.
I think it's better than a legit shot. I'm almost moving forward at this point, assuming Chase Claypool is on the roster. Okay. I think that he has been impressive. And what has been even more impressive is his willingness to do everything. We see him everywhere. And his willingness to work with anybody about anything. You have seen that guy running separate routes with quarterbacks in the field house, working with wide receivers on different techniques. Once practice has come to an end, he has made himself available to anybody who wants him. As far as a team standpoint, I just think he is coming in with the mindset of, this is my last real good opportunity, and I'm here with a real good quarterback. So I need to make the most of this, because if I don't, this may be the beginning of the end for me. I think he realizes that, and I think hungry dog runs faster. Probably pretty motivated to have some success this year.
KJ Hamler had a really nice deep ball on Wednesday, I believe it was, when we were out there.
Who threw that? Was that Shane? Was that Shane who threw that? It was, right? Or was it Trubisky?
I think it was.
It wasn't Josh. I know that. It was one of the other two. It wasn't Josh.
It was a really nice ball. There was a few. That was the day they really worked on the deep ball and hit some big ones. They had a few really nice. Look, he offers something they do not have on this roster. But I go back and forth of, but does he offer enough otherwise, right? Because they're building this team where all these guys have this real kind of versatile skill set, can do a lot of things, line up anywhere. But he also offers something that they don't have, which is this straight line blow by you speed. I think he's going to be an interesting guy to watch at camp.
He could be a returner too, depending on if he ends up making the team.
Isabella's a returner too, by the way. I mean, it's a guy that we didn't talk about.
No, we haven't talked. I haven't noticed Andy Isabella that much this offseason, which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
Because you tend to, just human nature, pay attention more to the new guys than the guys who have been there for at least a little bit. Yeah, I think KJ Hamler has an interesting, piece to this conversation. I'm surprised maybe you're setting me up for him. There's one other wide receiver who I've been quite impressed with, especially this past week. Do you know who I'm going to say? No, actually. Not that I'm not impressed with him.
Keon Coleman.
Keon Coleman.
Coleman. No, I wasn't. I do have it. I literally wrote it down. Keon Coleman. I just wanted to go over it. You go ahead, because I actually wrote down. Let's make sure, had it in my notes, make sure we at least tell fans our impression of Keon Coleman. So you go right ahead.
Yeah, during team drills, made a couple nice plays. I know I mentioned earlier when he had the route broken in front of him by Kaiir Elam for the interception. Could have probably been a little bit more physical on the route, but at the same time, totally understandable that miscommunications are happening at this point in the offseason. It even felt like that when Kaiir made the play offensively. They all kind of just stood around and were like, did you run the wrong route? Was that a bad? You try everything at this point. But Keon had a nice play down the left side of the field. That was a deep shot, and it was a big gain. On the day we were talking about the KJ Hamler play, that one was from Josh Allen. You look over and you go, ooh, that's Keon. Right now, one of the things that sometimes annoys me is I'll post a video of Keon Coleman during practice, and I'll say, good day for Keon Coleman, or something along those lines. And the comments will be, how the heck could you know that based off of just him catching the ball with no defender on him? This is just the video. This is just the video we can post. I can't post the video of them when they're in team drills. So when I say that, I am saying it as the entire sample size. That just happens to be the video that coincides with the sentiment. But I thought he had a really strong day 2. And then on day 3, the final day, which was Thursday, you can just tell he catches the ball with ease. He's pretty smooth for somebody his size. They're still not in pads yet, But for somebody who is criticized about his speed, he does not look slow. He does not play slow. And that's very evident even from just the first 4 weeks of practice we've got to see.
So my assessment of him after watching OTAs and minicamp in its entirety, I do think he needs to work on his release a little bit. And there was a video that I posted in rookie camp, and he was chopping his feet at the release. I think he was working on something. I don't care about that particular. I'm not saying that that's what he's doing all the time, but I do think he's got to work on his release a little bit off the line of scrimmage. But once he gets into his route, I think he's a smooth route runner. And I have been impressed with his hands. He just seems to catch the ball at all different spots. What do we call catch radius, right? The video I posted yesterday, I think you might have as well. I'm not sure. It was the last play of the last shooting period. And he went up
the
and
end zone.
He grabbed up the high
to the left part of the ends.
Yep. Grabbed the high point of the ball. Josh Allen threw it to the back shoulder. Yes, there's a coach covering him, basically. Like, that's the other thing, right? Anybody can do that with a coach covering you. It's practice. They're working on routes. But what you're trying to do is really kind of simulate, hey, if this ball is in this spot, going up and getting where you want to place it, how you want to go up and catch it. His body control for a taller player is very impressive. That's the basketball skill that comes out in him, and being able to kind of control his body in different situations with the ball, and his hands are going up to get the ball. Remember, he was a guard in basketball, even at his size. Like, he wasn't a big man rebounder. I'm sure he could do that a little bit. That's my assessment of him, which is if he can clean up and get better and work on the very first part of the play, the release, I think that then it all starts to come together a little bit more, because I don't think after that, I think he's ahead. He's ahead of the game after that. He's a good route runner. He's never going to blow by you with speed, but he can take the ball in his hands and start running by you because of his striding ability.
You know who he reminds me of a little bit?
Who?
Some former Bill that has been here for the last several years.
Still here? No, not here anymore.
No.
Oh, not Gabe Davis.
Look, yeah, Gabe Davis. He reminds me of Gabe Davis, and people will hear that and they'll wince, and you shouldn't, because Gabe Davis was a good player, but he's Gabe Davis with, I think, a high ceiling. Gabe Davis with great hands, like somebody who can. Gabe is a really good deep threat. We do not know if that will be an aspect of Keon Coleman's game that he specializes in. Gabe Davis made some really good plays for the Bills over the course of the last 4 years when he was here. So I think Keon Coleman will play a bigger role. I have left mandatory minicamp thinking that Keon Coleman will have a bigger role in the offense than I did when he was drafted at the end of April. And that's based off of OTAs, and that's based off of this week of practice. Just even watching where he's practicing, how he's practicing, who he's practicing with. Here are the parts where there's restrictions on what we can and can't say, but just take that for what it's worth. When you watch where he's going and what he's doing, he has a big piece of what they envision this offense being, and I think that he'll kind of step into that role pretty quickly.
All right. There were also a lot of guys who either came back or didn't practice at all because of injury. Too many guys because of injury. We can kind of give you an update on what Brandon Beane said about that and what they look like. It's always Game Day in Buffalo. Sal Capaccio, Matt Bove. All right. Really just a litany of names, right, on the injured list. But let's keep in context and in mind that the Bills are going to back off on anyone that has anything going on this time of year. And that was evident by what Brandon Beane said and told us after practice, which is he's optimistic. They're hopeful. I think the word he used was hopeful that everyone on the roster will be able to either start training camp or close after that be able to go. And obviously that's good news. So there's nothing to worry about. Khalil Shakir included, who was hurt last week. Maybe the most notable injury news is who came back, and that is Matt Milano.
Matt Milano, just even getting individual work is a good sign as far as Matt Milano is concerned. And he didn't look that out of place when he was doing the individual drills that he was participating in. My guess is that when they get to training camp, Matt Milano will be a limited participant for a couple days, probably limited for the first couple days when they put pads on, and then we'll just all of a sudden be, okay, a week into this thing, we're going to start ramping him up, getting him ready to go. Probably not somebody who plays in the first preseason game or in the second preseason game. Maybe give him snaps in the final preseason game. But I think Matt Milano has very much trended in the right direction, and the same thing can be said for basically everybody. There's not any injuries that they currently have that I'm worried about their long-term outlook on.
I agree with that. And the fact that he seemed like he did a little bit more every day, well, at least from Tuesday to Wednesday. Thursday was a lighter day, but seemed like Wednesday he did a little bit more than Tuesday. That shows that they felt confident what they saw in him on Tuesday, because what they do is they see how you react And after one day, do all the tracking and all that. And okay, if the body's good, we can kind of add a little bit more to the plate. So that's a really, really encouraging sign. Something that was a little discouraging for a lot of people this week, though, Matt. Tyler Bass had some struggles earlier in the week. And he did kick a 70-yard field goal in OTAs, wind aided, and that kind of made the rounds a little bit. He also missed some kicks on Wednesday, I believe it was. And he did make some too. I mean, but he missed a couple of shorter ones, made one, missed one, and kind of went back and forth after that. Any concern from you with Tyler Bass, especially after last year, only 83% kick field goal percentage?
So I jumped on Buffalo Plus with Dan Fates after one of the days of mandatory minicamp, and we talked about the Tyler Bass level of concern, and I said, I am concerned. I said on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being not at all concerned and 10 being very concerned, I'm teetering closer to like a 6 or a 7 as far as Tyler Bass is concerned, just because it has become a little bit of a trend going back to the playoffs. And a lot of the comments, I know I shouldn't read the comments, but I often do, were about the holder, and that this is a holding issue more than it is a Tyler Bass issue. And I don't know what they're going to do then, because if this is a holding issue, I don't know what other options you have. I don't know that you can just keep Browning on the roster as a backup emergency kicker, holder, punter. It just feels like it would be a wasted roster spot to me. I don't know what they're going to do. I still think Tyler Bass is a good kicker. I think he's in his head right now. It's so much to me like golf when you've got the yips. It's just, it happens. You got to snap out of it. It's better that it's happening now than in September, but you better figure it out in August because the Bills need you to figure it out.
Holder has been Sam Martin, but Jack Browning's also there. Jack Browning can punt. He can kick. I looked at the numbers for Tyler Bass, the contract. It's like kicks in this year. Tyler Bass is on this team. I don't think they're moving on from Tyler Bass.
There's nothing you can do.
He's just going to have to be better than what he was. That's really just what it comes down to. I mean, the money, you're not going to move on from him. And Matt, I just don't think this team in this era with this window that they have, I don't think they're suddenly going to, move on from Tyler Bass for a rookie undrafted free agent. I just don't see that happening. So it's just going to be on him to be better than what he's been.
The thing that makes me believe it could be some sort of holding issue or something that they're trying that's different. He missed a kick on Wednesday, short, that might have been 45 yards. Tyler Bass isn't missing
went up
a
in the air, and there's a goalpost, folks. It went up in the air and went short.
He missed a 45-yarder short by 5 yards. The ball went like something happened in the air.
I agree. It's weird.
But it was not touched at the line. It was not blocked. No. Nothing like that happened. So when that happens, you then immediately snap your head back to see, was that a 65-yard kick? No, it wasn't. It was a 45-yard kick. Then he missed another one in the same direction and then missed another one going in the opposite direction. He made one in between that. But I think during that particular part of practice, he was 1 of 4. So I just don't know what was going on. And admittedly, I did not see who was holding those. So I don't know if that was Martin or if that was somebody else. I did not notice that.
Right. I know. Sometimes you just, the red jerseys, they're shuttling him in and out, and you can't really tell sometimes. All right. Another thing that to me was a bit of a struggle that needs to be cleaned up. James Cook dropped too many passes for my liking during the OTAs and minicamp. And I think James Cook has good hands. So I'm not going to sit here and go, oh my God, James Cook, you can't throw him the ball. I think you should throw him the ball. He has good hands. I think the problem is sometimes he thinks about running with the ball a little bit before he catches it, because it seems like it's the easy ones in the open field that he's dropping. And that's what happened last year a few times.
Yeah, it's weird. He had, a great catch on the final day of mandatory minicamp, a fingertip catch where he's, stretched out, makes the fingertips, brings it in. And it's like, okay, well, he can do that. Struggles with the easy ones, makes the hard ones, which is a very weird thing to see, especially from a running back. I just think back to, this is once again been a struggle for him, not just during this portion of the offseason, but even last year. In the game where he was incredible against Dallas, he dropped another pass that would have been a touchdown. He dropped a pass against the Eagles that would have been a touchdown. He had another drop that would have been a touchdown in maybe the Bucs game, I think. So I still like James Cook a lot. I think he is very clearly their number one receiver or number one running back. I just don't know how much I trust him to be used as a pass catcher often.
So I want to give everybody a little insight on how this works here on this show. Matt put in our private chat, can we talk about Josh calling plays? And we can. I just want to tell you, this is going to be the same debate we had about what it matters on special teams a couple of weeks ago that you and I had, because you apparently want to talk about it because maybe you think it means much more than I do or is more interesting than I do. I
No,
think
I
it's
think it's
almost just a nothing thing.
I think it's cool. I don't think that it's a big deal. I just think that it's very clearly whenever I know he's calling Joe Brady's plays, but even when you talk to Connor McGovern and Dawson Knox about Joe Brady's offense, they make comments that, yeah, it's Joe Brady's offense, but it's Josh Allen's offense. And we're going to do what Josh Allen wants.
Yes.
So my read on that is I'm watching Josh in the headset with the play sheet, calling in the plays, and Joe kind of signaling to him like, that was a good play, or no, I don't like that one. To me, that's just more Joe getting a feel of what Josh likes. Okay. Is that fair?
I think it's very fair. And listen, McDermott and Brady will tell you the same thing that you just said that McGovern will say. Like McDermott said a couple weeks ago, it's Josh Allen. You know, he's got the quarterback's got to be comfortable. Brady will tell you it's Josh Allen's offense. He's got to be comfortable. You know, I asked Brady when I saw him at the combine. I saw him and had a conversation with him and asked him about coming in for Ken Dorsey when he did and what that was like. And he said, look, I mean, it's tough. What you have to do is you have to start with what Josh likes and you kind of keep that stuff in and then you kind of expand from there. And I think that's what they're doing here. So yes, I hear you. I get it. I think it's the end of minicamp. You're giving Josh Allen kind of a day off basically from throwing, give him a chance to kind of have some fun, hang loose in there. I also think for the most part, a lot of it's scripted. They're not actually just calling. They're not putting the whole playbook in. He's giving him a whole list of plays probably we want to run during this period. And he's kind of picking them out in some way, shape, or form. I don't know exactly how that would work. But to me, that's what they're basically doing. I like your point, though, that because it is Josh's offense, maybe Joe gets a perspective of what Josh would do in that particular situation. And he can kind of go back and refer to that when he thinks about it in the offseason.
Yeah, there was one, it was just like a ho-hum play, but there was one play where Josh was like fist bumping, like, yes, I made the right call. And then I looked over to Joe and Joe was giving him the thumbs up, like, yeah, that was the right thing to do. But it was 2 days in a row. It was not just the final day. He was doing the same thing on Wednesday. So that's why I'm like, oh, there's a little bit more there, just because this was not a final day of mandatory minicamp. This is how we're going to do the last 10 minutes of practice. It was a multiple day thing, just that made me a little bit more interested in it.
All right, before we wrap up here, Brandon Beane spoke after practice as well. Few things that were interesting. One thing that was, I thought, all right, well, for us, we would care because it affects our professional lives and how we cover the team, but I think fans would like to know. He did not rule out having joint practices this year against another opponent. Now, obviously, you do that against a team you're playing in preseason. So either A, that would mean that Chicago or Carolina would come to Buffalo to do it, to St. John Fisher, or it would mean that the Bills would go to Pittsburgh to do it in Latrobe, PA for a few days before playing the Steelers. So you have any thought on what that could mean, or if they're going to do it at all?
It's weird that he said they didn't rule it out. To me, that almost is the story within itself of, so does that mean that you are planning on doing that? There's so many Carolina connections that I immediately thought Carolina. And I thought he was like, Dan Morgan's going to get on the phone and we're going to just figure out some of the final details. They're going to come up to St. John Fisher for 3 days and then we're going to do, or they do it in Buffalo. They do it in Orchard Park because we don't have the training camp schedule yet. So you could have everybody at the Bills facility, right? That's not out of the realm of possibility. It doesn't have to be in Rochester.
Well, but training camp needs to be open to the fans. That's a very, very logistical, tough thing to do right now.
Okay. When do they play? Is Carolina the first preseason game?
No, third.
Isn't at that point training camp in Rochester done and back in Orchard Park?
Yes, which is why to me it would probably be then. It's a great point. I didn't think about it from this because of what I just said. You're probably then looking at either the Chicago game and team or at Pittsburgh. It's possible, Matt. They could do it in Buffalo. I just don't know how you would do it. Fans, that needs to be open to fans. And with all the construction going on and the lack of room, I just don't know how you would do that.
That's a good point. Ryan Poles, too, is a Canandaigua native.
Yes, he is.
So there is a connection there of Ryan Poles that would be sweet. That would be really fun.
And remember, the Bears are playing in the Hall of Fame game the week before that. if they want to say, hey, we already have a week under our belt with Justin Fields, and it would be even,
Caleb Williams.
beneficial. Caleb Williams, sorry. We have a week under our belts with Caleb Williams, then, we could, they would do something like that. I actually think Pittsburgh might be the better option here. I think, you have Mike Tomlin and Sean McDermott. They have so much mutual respect for one another. They've done this before, the two organizations. I know different people back in 2014 in Latrobe. I just think it's the second the second preseason week. It just makes a lot of sense.
Sure, it does. It's just weird to me and I know they don't play each other this year. It's just always weird to me doing it within your conference. They played each other in the playoffs last year. It's just so you don't really think about the Panthers, or you don't really think about the Bears. You're not playing them anytime soon. They're in the NFC. Just join practices within the conference. I know they did it back in 2014, but at that point, the Bills were in a very different place. I think
Can I give you a little secret in front office circles?
Sure.
Some of the front office people like doing that because they get some intel on the players they're going to be playing against.
Oh, interesting. I never thought of it from that perspective. Why would the Bills want intel on the Steelers?
I'm just telling you, it just gives
I know. No,
even if you're playing them that year, like that's happened before. I think the Patriots played the Texans last year. I think they scrimmaged and then played. I think those things happen too.
Do you think that it happens? Do you think that it's
the way that Bean said it? He said possibly. I think it sounded to me like they're working on something. Like they just don't have the logistics nailed down. So yeah, I think it might happen. That sounds really, like it's very possible. He used the word possibly. Anything else that Bean said before we wrap up here that you want to talk about?
Not necessarily. I know he mentioned, you asked him about the kickoff rules, and I loved his answer that he's not going to be thinking about it while he's trying to make his 6-foot birdie putt. He's like, you're thinking about it. So I thought that was a funny answer. No, nothing really else was a major takeaway. I just think the fact that they did practice on the third day in itself is interesting, but it was also very clear. Like Kyer Elam, I talked to him about it, and he was like, there's a lot of new faces on this team. We need to work, not in a bad way, just it's a good thing for us to be on the field. So that's what they did. And then we went and talked to Sean, and Sean said, everybody's circling around me for a one-sentence answer of we need to practice. And then he elaborated a little bit and said, listen, so many new faces. We need to get in as much work before training camp as humanly possible. And then he gave a shout out to the players because he's like, I know not every team does 3 days. These guys were up for it, and I appreciate that from them. So I think and then Brandon talked about that too.
We want to say happy Father's Day to everybody out there, all dads that are listening, all the dads that are watching. Of course, Matt, I know you lost your father not too long ago. Now, is this the second Father's Day? Well, I don't remember the day he passed last year.
No, this is the first Father's Day without him. It's okay.
Everybody, you're going to be okay. Your mom going to be okay. Obviously, that's a tough time for you guys.
Yeah, it is. Last Father's Day was so straight. So we're recording this on Flag Day, June 14th. A year ago today, he went into the hospital. Okay. So he went into the hospital a year ago today. He was in the hospital for about a month, and he passed on July 10th. Okay. So when he was in the hospital last year, we were watching the U.S. Open. Like I was in the room, and we just sat there and we watched the U.S. Open for the Saturday and the Sunday. So that was Father's Day last year. That was my first Father's Day as actually a father. So it was a very strange Father's Day last year. It almost felt like, in a weird way, the first Father's Day without him, just because he was in the hospital, even though I was, physically with him. Yeah. So yeah, it's gonna be a weird weekend, but at the same time, it'll also be my first real Father's Day with my daughter. So it's trying to balance it all, and I don't exactly know how I'll do or how I'll be, but it's just the way it is.
Well, much love to you and your family and everybody. And I know it's going to be a tough weekend, but also a celebratory weekend to remember your dad, obviously. And it's always the U.S. Open. We have one thing in my house. My wife always says, "What do you want to do for Father's Day?" Mm-hmm. And I always say, no matter what we do, it doesn't matter. I just want to watch the end of the U.S. Open. I want to sit on the couch and watch the end of the U.S. Open. Now this year will be different. We have a travel baseball doubleheader on Father's Day.
Oh,
you know what? We scheduled it because we're like, we got to get these games in. And you know what? It's baseball and dads together. So grandpas and fathers can go watch their kids play, and we're going to be okay.
Well, that sounds like a very fun day. I told my wife the exact same thing. She's like, what do you want to do for Father's Day? And I said, I would like to golf in the morning. And then I would like to be home doing nothing, watching the end of the U.S. Open. That's all I really want. I don't want to go out. Admittedly, this year's weird. I don't really want to celebrate or anything. So I was like, I just kind of want to lay low and take my mind off of everything as much as possible. But baseball game, a doubleheader baseball game. For you, that sounds great because I know you love baseball. To me, that doesn't, but hey, that's okay.
Well, listen, everybody, thanks a lot for being with us and throughout all OTAs and minicamp. We got so much more planned for you. We're really got some really cool stuff planned during training camp. We can't wait. We're not going anywhere, though. We'll be back here next week. And might have a special guest next week because there's an event coming up that Matt and I are both a part of. So we'll keep you updated on that. And it's going to be a show that you're not going to want to miss. And that's because we're going to keep talking about the Buffalo Bills because it's always game day in Buffalo. Thanks to our producer, Mike Robier. And of course, you can find us on audio. If you're watching on video, you just want to listen on a podcast, driving, as Matt says in the commercial, you get you an extra hour of the day because, you know, you can do so much, right? You can do that wherever you pod. And of course, on the Sal Sports YouTube page, if you're just listening on audio, you can always see our smiling faces. Matt, happy Father's Day to you. Have a great weekend, my man.
And to you.